startups ecosystem. To spearhead the session, we have with us Anurag Sinha, CEO and Director, FPL Technologies, OneCard. And joining him, we have with us Shri Suvendu Pati, Chief General Manager, Fintech Department, Reserve Bank of India. We have with us once again Mr. G. Padmanabhan, Senior Consultant, AZB and Partners, Ex-Executive Director, Reserve Bank of India and Ex-Chairman, Bank of India, and Mr. Pranay, Jhaveri, Managing Director, India and South Asia, Euronet Worldwide. Can we have a dynamic round of applause as we invite the dynamic minds here of the industry? And let's gather more insights. We've been focusing on fintech and startups, and now specifically with regard to India's MSME growth. With that, let me request Anurag to take it over from here.
Thank you, Kavya. MSME, has always been talked about as a very, very important sector for Indian economy. But we have been given the slot just after lunch. But we will do justice to the session of, bringing discussion around how can fintech play a role in growing MSME sector in India. I think a lot has been written about MSME sector, about its importance to Indian GDP. Just want to put some stats around to set the context. Approximately 30% of Indian GDP comes from MSME, and more importantly, they're a big employer in the country, right across different income segments: manufacturing, services, trading, more than 6 crore units. And one of the fastest growing sector, because typically MSME sector is very close to where consumer demand is, because they are the last mile, or they are the one who's actually manufacturing the last mile on this side. So on both sides, as we see a lot of dynamic demand is happening. So this sector is witnessing. We have seen a lot of new sectors like direct-to-consumer brands, e-commerce, which is driving growth. A lot of sellers are selling, goods at a very fast pace. We've also seen, especially during COVID times, a lot of these SMEs and MSME have digitized themselves because to access either demand or supply, both sides. Relatively speaking, fintechs have done less work in this area because a lot of fintechs have solved for consumer side. That's actually one of the big topic for us because we want to make sure that everybody understand the opportunity on this side and what are some green shoots which the fintech community can start building on it. As much as the data aggregation, technology advancement is happening on the consumer side, let me tell you guys, almost at a very different scale, the same thing is happening on the MSME side. So it's actually a very, very interesting time to talk about this topic because I believe that in next couple of years, this will actually become a fairly large part of the fintech ecosystem. So with that, sir, Padmanabhan sir has been, everybody has listened to him on various topics. Sir, you have been a regulator. You have served on various banks, boards. You have been guiding a lot of fintechs, and startup community through your various associations. I think as a first question, sir, because a lot of people would not be fully aware about the opportunity in this area, from your vantage point, sir, what are the few areas you want to talk about in MSME sector where fintechs can play a role? And then we'll build on that, sir.
Okay, so good afternoon. Glad to be back again. I think the fintech always throws up surprises, and I thought I had talked about most of the issues, but suddenly you asked me to talk about the MSME. But let me make an attempt. I think first of all, while you said that MSME is important for the Indian economy, I would probably say that MSME is important world over as a segment, and particularly as far as the Asia-Pacific region is concerned. Now, they started getting into greater attention after the G20 adopted financial inclusion as one of the goals, and I think most of the countries have been driving that. But having said that, let me try to sort of demystify one of the first things that people always confuse about, on which I don't think we have any definite conclusion, so what I want to flag is that just because a country has progressed in financial inclusion, does it mean that we have clearly closed out the financing gap as far as the MSME sector is concerned? I would argue that probably not enough data is available to come to any sort of conclusion, and these two are different. While financial inclusion is important, but whether driving financial inclusion will close out the financing gap is a different story. Maybe in a lighter vein, I would say that there is a lot of difference between literacy and education. So literacy is the basic step, but education you have to achieve much more. Now, I think even in respect to the financial inclusion, I think the way it was approached, that has been an issue world over, and particularly in India. I think one of the persons, India for a long time, all of us thought that financial inclusion always will have to be given in a bundled form. There has to be an insurance, there has to be a deposit, there has to be a payment, there has to be credit. Now, the question that the fintechs have been posing to the regulator right from the beginning is that, is it important to ensure that all these are given together? Is there an order in which this has to happen? Or can this be completely unbundled and at some stage we can bundle it back again? So this was one of the conundrum which existed right from the beginning. The second issue that I would argue is that probably the way in which the financial inclusion was approached mainly by the banks who were asked to do this right in the beginning, and you know this very well, is that the banks decided what they thought were a suite of products to be offered. Whether these products made any sense or could take care of the real credit needs of this sector or anybody whom we are targeting in financial inclusion, that was again another story. Probably it was not happening. Now, the other issue that this sector brings on the table is that today morning, I think there was a lot of discussion on this, how the technology or the fintechs can aid. But one of the main problems as we face today, where technology will provide a solution, but to which we need to find definite answers, is the absence of data. So unless and until we have enough of data, I think this will be an issue which will come to haunt us for some time. But having said that, if you look at the financing aspects of MSME, let us try to take a few questions and try to see whether we have answers and whether the technology will provide or the fintechs will provide answers to this question. So the first question is, are we able to provide timely credit? And is timely credit any sort of credit, whether it's original credit or discounting of receivables, whatever it is, are we able to provide this in a timely manner under the current setup? Probably the answer to that is no. The second issue, which is getting a little more critical and which is attracting the interest around the world, is there a gender bias to this financing? In fact, while talking about financial inclusion, while talking about UPI and the success story of UPI, one of the former governors of the Reserve Bank of India said that one of the problems where the women hesitated getting into this in a big way, whether it's payments or technology driven or whatever it is, they did not want to share their mobile numbers, which is lying in the public domain, for the reason that anybody could pick it up and get all sorts of calls. So the question arises whether there is a gender bias which is happening. Maybe SHGs are primarily driven by women, but I think we are talking about a bigger size of target population we are talking about, whether it's available, whether technology can provide an answer to that. Now the third issue which I would flag is that whether the traditional financial institutions are able to provide the kind of outreach which is required for the financial inclusion or the MSME financing to take? Probably the answer to all this which I have raised is no. And this is where I believe that a partnership between the fintech and the traditional lending institutions become very critical. In fact, I am very closely looking at how, for instance, the data problem is going to get solved by the so-called account aggregators, which we have just started licensing. But maybe a word of caution is that in respect of the data, how we manage data, who can have access to data, all this will have to be thought through very carefully between the system and the regulators to make sure that usage of data in the positive way is done by the fintechs to provide solution to all this. I would just conclude by stating one more thing, is that what the fintechs provide or bring on the table, which will assist this whole sector, is what is generally called ABCD of finance. And what does A stand for? A stands for artificial intelligence and Internet of Things. B stands for the big data and quantum computing. C is cloud. And D is distributed ledger technology. So when the fintechs are able to bring this ABCD onto the table, the right kind of policies and move forward can make a lot of changes as far as this financing of this particular sector is concerned. Maybe I stop here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the long answer and also putting up things in perspective. Just want to add to it that almost 50% of MSMEs, especially the micro enterprises, are in rural area. Also, a lot of micro enterprises are actually run by women. So actually, a lot of these things we spoke about is quite pertinent to that, sir. The other issue is that while the data is being aggregated, especially when we talk about MSME, the quantum of data is much more than the consumer side, and hence technology can play a big role in it. And that's when I bring in Suvendu, sir. RBI has been articulating in various form in every, at every forum, also in their guidances, that MSME is an important sector and it's very important for the Indian economy. I just want to, to cover about, as a regulator, what are the steps RBI has taken in the, in the past? Also, what is the future outlook of, steps which RBI proposed so that this collaboration becomes real? Because we all know, especially in India, the fintechs is a collaboration between a technology company and a regulated entities. So, and which will be guided by the way regulations are set. So your views on that?
Thank you, Anurag, and thank you to the organizers for having me here. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here and amongst all the brilliant minds that the fintech ecosystem in India presents. Before I get on to the question, I would like to say that Reserve Bank has created a fintech department, and that is the reason I am here. And this was created in this year only, at the beginning of this year. So with that, let's coming to the MSME various policy initiatives. If you look at, traditionally, it has been at the center of policy making in Reserve Bank's mind. Few of the, generic policy matters that has been driving this credit to the sector has been the, the guidance given in terms of the priority sector lending. There is also this guidance with regard to the lending to the NBFCs and for their on lending to the, small and micro enterprises up to a limit, say 20 lakhs. That also qualifies as a priority sector lending. Other thing that has been, clearly driven is that up to 10 lakh of rupees, the banks or the lending institutions should not insist on a collateral. Apart from that, these are some of the, policy directions we have given. On the tech side, some developments have taken, like the creation of the Threads platform. Besides that, we had also framed out in 2016 this account aggregator framework. So this we'll talk about a little later. It has got a great potential, and how this is getting could be unlocked for future credit delivery. Other piece of policy initiatives which have been taken by Reserve Bank India is with regard to the peer-to-peer lending platforms coming out with the co-lending models, whereby the banks access to the cheaper cost of funds and leverage with the NBFC's reach. So this could be married together. So in this sense, there has been a lot of policy initiatives, and with regard to the coming to the fintech and the innovation space, Reserve Bank of India in 2019 came out with the regulatory sandbox framework. And very, very pertinent to note that in the third cohort, the theme was MSME lending. And that cohort received some applications, and currently, as we speak, there are 8 entities which are testing their products under the regulatory sandbox framework of Reserve Bank of India under the theme MSME lending. And going forward in the times to come, once these products are tested and successfully exit, some of them definitely would become scalable, they will become, marketable, and they would, others could be using that. So there is and I would take this platform to invite that now we are going to open the announcement has been made with regard to the theme neutral regulatory sandbox cohort. So any of the entities, any of the products you want to test, you can come and use this platform for testing your products and within the controlled environment. So these are some of the key initiatives that we have taken, and one of the mandate for the fintech department is to foster innovation and closely look at this space. And as part of that innovation drive, also overall theme, the Reserve Bank Innovation Hub has been created, and the CEO is very much here, and he shared a wonderful session with you all in the morning. So these are some of the initiatives that are underway and has been taken in the past. But as they say, there is always a room for improvement. I would rather improvise. There is a hall like Jasmine Hall 1 for improvement. We have miles to go before we reach some stage. The untapped potential is huge in this segment. Most of the fintechs, they have worked a lot on the payment space, but this is the lending space where they can now really put their minds into, as the potential is huge and there is a need for the economy. If we are to grow to a 5 trillion economy, this space needs attention, and fintechs and the brilliant minds that we have, they should seriously pay closer look at this segment, how to unlock this area and how technology can bring efficiency and partner with the lending institutions to drive this segment further. I'll stop at this stage. At some other point, I'll talk about few of the other ideas that we have in Reserve Bank of India and where possible innovations can take place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I'll come back to you on that. But I think extending the thought, what Suvendu sir said, that, like a lot of technology development, which is, the infrastructure which has been created for consumer payments, or let's say KYC, on which consumer lending has been built, a lot of these are applicable for MSME as well. So maybe sometime it's like a blind spot where a lot of fintechs are focusing on consumer side, and they can actually use a similar infrastructure to create solutions around MSME, which is also a fairly large area and focus area for bank lending. At this point, probably I'll bring in Pranay. Access to finance has often been quoted as a problem to solve in growing MSME sector. And in modern era, as we know, data is the main ingredient for credit underwriting or credit dissemination. And, Euronet is a fairly large payment infrastructure company, works across banks, merchant, and consumer. You get to see a lot of data flowing into your processing engines. What do you think, how can this data be utilized, or rather build layer on this data? Fintechs can innovate and build solutions which can be utilized for dissemination of credit, because especially as far as MSME growth is concerned, the underlying data is quite large because it is transactions, business transactions, and you have to analyze at scale where this can be usable for a credit underwriting purposes.
Thanks, Anurag. So I think first and foremost, I would say that we have established the importance of the MSME segment in terms of the contribution to the GDP, the sort of exports contribution, and the employment that they generate. And as Suvendu sir said, if you have to fast track meeting the $5 trillion GDP target, then this sector definitely requires a lot more impetus and a lot more support. RBI and the government are providing an enabling environment, whether it is the policies or the account aggregator framework, as sir said, or setting up regulations for the trade receivables discounting system, or MSME Samadhan for delayed payments. I think one more key issue plaguing the sector is around liquidity management, cash flow management because of delayed payments. So that's one more issue that as an industry we need to look into, and how can the MSMEs get faster flow of funds, right? Again, it links back to credit if it's discounting of receivables, but then overall, how can they get faster flow of funds? So liquidity management needs to look into, and can fintech have solutions for liquidity management as well? The next point is around the data piece that Anurag, you spoke about. So, and Padmanabhan sir, I think very nicely called it out, the ABCD. If you can leverage ABCD and obviously the India stack, then you can look at alternate data, right? I mean, typically for bank credit, you need collaterals, you need to have a credit history, but in the informal sector, you may not have access to credit history and collateral. So you could look at alternate data, whether it is cash flows, whether it is GST, and if at all the data is available, because a lot of these enterprises might be smaller enterprises, right? They might not be even filing GST. Medium enterprises for sure would be filing GST. So you could look at the GSTN data, you could look at the payroll data, you could look at, utilities, bill payment data, social media trails. I mean, whole set of, and there could be several other data sets that one could mine, and then, run those algorithms to come at and assess the credit risk and underwrite the loan application. So I think while a lot of data is getting generated, this, the ABCD has to be leveraged, the India stack has to be leveraged to mine this data and make the necessary credit decisions. And also, I believe fintechs have done a wonderful job when it comes to payments, right? So payments is also a very important piece in this whole conundrum. A lot of these MSMEs need to have access to digital payments, and that will both for online presence as well as their physical establishments, because that will help them to expand the coverage, and that would also help in faster fund flows. And again, UPI potentially could be a game changer, and as our Honorable Prime Minister said, UPI is a way of life. Payments could also be a game changer in terms of faster flow of funds and expanding the customer coverage for some of these MSMEs.
Thank you. You want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of points. I think one is that, as Suvendu said, while we have probably a retail payment system which the world is benchmarking, I would argue that because it is there, it will be easier for us to achieve what we set out to achieve as far as this MSME credit is concerned. Because unless the payment system is efficient, and that was the unbundling that the fintechs have been talking about right from the beginning. So that is very crucial. And the second is how critically we automate this process. In fact, while I said ABCD, in my recent trip to Singapore, I came across a startup, a fintech, and let me not name. And they have implemented a complete automated system for this disbursement of MSME retail loans, where they start with probably 25 data points, and over a period of an year, they are able to scale it up to 500, 800, and it is parameterizable as per the institution's requirements. But the decision taking is standardized. It is faster the moment you put in the information. At some stage, we will have to talk about that discretion is to move out. The disparate data sets will have to come together, and the decision taking will be based on an automated machine learning process using artificial intelligence, and that is going to be the ultimate solution for this.
Yeah, I think very relevant, sir, because one of the reason we have spoken and we have seen is that cost of delivering finance, especially at a lower value, is a very, very important problem to solve. And in the absence of that, a lot of this financing is done by informal sources, which actually increases the cost of financing for these entities. Which completely agree with her, because if this automation has happened, we can actually see a large amount of capital moving from banks and large NBFCs into this area. So when they said that, one thing I want to just build on this, we also have to, foresee that how some of these MSMEs can actually become part of a global supply chain, because, the government of India is driving a vision of making, India Atmanirbhar and, making in India and selling globally, and especially given the geopolitical situation, there is an opportunity for us to be part of the global supply chain. A lot of initiatives have been taken. Some of these, problems which we're debating for domestic market, do you see they'll also become part of a, like a cross-border payments, and, how do you actually see trade finance? Because the challenge is these are companies, it's just that their size is small, but the requirements are like a company, a large corporate, which banks are there to serve. How do you actually bring down the similar solutions for, much smaller scale companies, because their requirements are becoming very similar to a large company?
Yes, there is no gainsaying that the MSMEs need to contribute and take advantage of the opportunities that it's before us. But I would first understand there are 2 points when they need to become globally competitive. From 2 aspects they need to first address. One is whether they are, in terms of costs and pricing, whether they are competitive. And second, in terms of the quality, whether the quality acceptance is of the international standards. And typically in this area, I feel there is some opportunity for fintechs to partner with the existing MSMEs to provide solutions and improvements and enhancements in this space. Typically through the use of technology, through the use of analytics, fintechs can, drive down the costs, make the, markets, reach these MSMEs, reach those markets. Also, through analysis of data, find the right kind of match for their, products, who are, as well as, match them with the suppliers as well as the buyers. A second aspect is with regard to, as we have experienced, some of these new age fintech entities, both in the agri-processing space and other spaces, they have used real technology to assess the quality of the products, and not really in a traditional way, but in a very, very advanced, using technology. So those kind of quality assurances would guarantee that their products would be accepted abroad, and this would be a great support to the MSMEs. Identifying what are the, whether they meet those international standards. We have seen some real life examples, very, very interesting, products and services that they can provide. But there is a need for these MSMEs also to understand these requirements and reach out to those fintechs and partner with them and leverage their expertise to, scale up to meet those international standards. Other aspects would be with regard to the managing the information, the account aggregator framework, as I was talking some time back. Now with the, majority of the, public sector banks going to joining, as well as SEBI has probably made some announcement that their regulated entities are also going to come on board. Also, we would also expect down the line, GSTN also would get integrated into this. So this, in fact, this framework offers a very, very huge potential going forward. And already it has a potential, but further the, the potential on which this tech companies can build and products and innovations towards this space is absolutely fabulous. And this potential are huge. So innovations need to come onto this space. But one bit of caution I would also like to add here the data management needs to be consent-based. It's not something that they need to be factoring in. It is ultimately when they are, let's say, getting access to the marketplace data or some other data. So those privacy concerns and privacy issues also are going to get, as we go along, more stringent. So it has to be, while they use this data, they need to factor in those kind of stringent requirements that would come along the way. But the potential is huge. The opportunities are immense. It is only the waiting for innovations to build on this kind of opportunities that lay ahead of us. I'm sure this will happen, and with the brilliant minds that we have.
Can I just add to what Suvendu sir said? So, we have one of the largest auto industries. We are globally the largest, right, when it comes to the auto industry. Now, and obviously this industry has evolved over a period of time. Let's take the example of somebody like a Maruti, who has built the entire auto ancillary industry or the auto parts industry, and which are primarily MSMEs, right? And these MSMEs have adopted technology. They've built world-class products which meet international benchmarks. Some of them have grown very big. They're exporting now. They have become big export houses. So, if it can be done in the auto sector, leveraging technology now, whether it's here, we are talking of fintech, but technology can definitely be leveraged. If it can be done in the auto industry, I believe it can be done in other industry sectors as well. Secondly, we are also a very large global cross-border remittances company, and we have fairly large, we service all the important corridors, and we offer various services to our partners over here. So today a beneficiary can directly receive a credit into the bank account. If you have to solve for that, we have RD arrangements with our partner banks. We have partnered with Paytm Payments Bank, whereby the credit could be received into the Paytm Payments Bank wallet as well. So happy to work with the industry and provide some of the solutions to address the cross-border piece as well.
Awesome. But there is a missing piece, right?
Yeah.
The missing piece is the work that is happening among the central banks in the world, which is the CBDC. So the moment, the central banks have got into the cross-border because of the transparency, because of the delay, because of the cost, right? All these are critical as far as the MSME is concerned, in terms of their cost, in terms of exchange rate they get, in terms of the delay in payments, in terms of the amount they have to spend on LCs, BCs, all sorts of kind of things. Now, once the CBDCs come on board, maybe it's not tomorrow, it's few years away, but if the cross-border payments are going to get as efficient, let us say, of a UPI in India or the retail payment system, it will be a game changer again for the cross-border for the MSMEs.
Yeah.
I think the CBDC, sorry sir, the CBDC piece, so I think apart leaving aside retail, as we discussed, the wholesale CBDC would have larger use cases, to address the issues.
Yeah, I didn't go down to the details, but CBDC in general, because the central banks are looking at both the wholesale and the retail.
Sure. Sorry.
And I'm happy that a central banker is not discussing CBDC, others are. So that's the curiosity or the interest that it generates. But as rightly pointed out, it offers a great deal for the cross-border payments, especially for India. We have a large diaspora outside as well as remittances both. So it's definitely is going to be a game changer, and if that happens, but it also requires other countries to come on board, and once those kind of electronic money, this CBDC comes into place, this cost factor, the commissions that go around it, all that would definitely come down.
Yeah.
Couple of more things, if you permit, I'll just say that innovations where I would leave some thoughts with these industry minds here. Whether we can have something like a revolving credit, always maybe a small ticket size, but should be available to the MSMEs on tap, readily available. Something of those nature, if the products can be designed, that would be a big relief for them. This has been like for a small amount also they keep on chasing, asking for it. So kindly think about this. And as somebody said in the morning, like a vegetable vendor or a fruit vendor, morning he goes and sells, and there is he also taps into informal systems of credit. So there are many opportunities where daily products, short-term products could be built into. So, and with technology, the cost of administration definitely can be driven down. It should make them viable, that is what one of the primary reasons why other, traditional lending institutions were not looking at them. So there is a lot on offer that we can think about. And in terms of peer-to-peer, co-lending model to, scale up further, or, every institution need not have a, tie-up with another institution on a bilateral basis. Can we think of something? I know some of the entities are already working on this. Can there be a platform where there would be visibility and the partners can choose themselves? Some of these ideas, already some of the work must be going on, some are going on, but this is something we should, look at to leverage the potential these segments offer.
Thank you for the summary, sir. I don't have anything else to add because you gave a very nice summary. Probably just want to add one more to it. I think Suvendu sir touched upon is that MSME is a very large, wide sector. There is also a merit of looking at vertical solutions, looking at one supply chain and build for it. That itself could be very large. With this, probably, if we have time, we will open up for a couple of questions if anybody wanted to ask, to the panel. I know we are already overshot our time, but are we okay with the time? Yeah, okay. So good. I think either we answered every question in our conversation, sir, or I think the post-afternoon session took over. But thank you. I enjoyed our session, sir. We covered right from cautions to opportunities to actually some workable ideas, what sir spoke about. Also some of the work around CBDC, which is already being done. With this, I think we should take away the lessons from this session, and hopefully when we meet a couple of years later in the same GFF, we'll be talking about much different questions for MSME sector. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.